Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Coffee Chat with Matt. Today's topic that I wanted to bring to you is small trees to add color to the landscape. And I brought up a handful of different types of trees here, all things that are going to add a lot of color to your landscape. And some of these are probably going to be new for a lot of you. In fact, some of them are just kind of new to the industry in general, like this one right here, the Flamethrower Redbud, which we'll talk about. So some really neat plant material over here that I wanted to talk to you about. The biggest tree in here at maturity is going to be this one right here, which is called a tricolored beech. And I'll show you a pretty nice mature one of those that we have planted here. But otherwise, all of these are relatively small trees, for the most part maxing out around 15 or 20 feet high, and in some cases much shorter than that. So you don't need a massive property or a big space for these. In fact, most of these will do well in just about anybody's yard, smaller in-town lot, maybe a tighter area up near the house. None of these are big trees that you couldn't plant 3, 5, 10 feet away from a home or something. So let's just jump in here. This tree right here is actually an ornamental crabapple called Royal Raindrops. We've been growing crabapples for almost 100 years now. And I've been doing it for 31, 32, something like that years. And I've seen a lot of varieties of crabapples come and go. And when I say come and go, meaning they get introduced to the market or someone starts growing them and they really turn out to be a messy, ugly tree. They're disease prone, they drop big rotten fruit, they get apple scab, all sorts of other things, right? This is Royal Raindrops, and it is a really great performer in the landscape. And it has a few characteristics that make it a great performer. One, I love the color of the foliage. It's got this really nice sort of burgundy, almost chocolatey brown color to it. It comes out brighter in the spring and then sort of becomes this little bit darker color for this time of year. And then actually has really nice fall color. Oddly enough, there's one little leaf in there showing a little fall color, so I can show you that right there by my thumb. So beautiful sort of orangey red fall color. Sometimes it's a yellowy orange, but it has beautiful fall color, which is not typical of crabapples. The other thing that you're going to notice there by my thumb is that fruit, which as you can see is much smaller than my thumbnail. So I have a crabapple at home that has very large fruit that's falling off right now. And right now they're still relatively hard when they fall off, and it's a little bigger than a grape. They're going to start rotting, and then the bees are going to get after them and they get all mushy. It is way out in the yard and it's been there for a long time, so I'm going to leave it. But I would much prefer something like this, which has a very small persistent fruit. So this fruit is full grown. It's not going to get any bigger than this. And the interesting thing about it is right now it's rock hard. I'm squeezing as hard as I can, and that fruit will not squish or whatever. It is rock solid. That persistent fruit is going to stay on all winter long, which is going to be beautiful. So it's going to stay on the tree. The birds aren't going to eat it yet because it's still very, very hard. And it will start to soften up in February, March, that kind of time frame. And the birds will start eating it off. What they don't eat off will basically sort of dehydrate on the tree and just fall off dry. So there will be virtually no mess. I mean, something's going to fall off at some point, but not to the point where you're going to have a big, messy tree on your hands. This tree is covered with bright pink flowers in the springtime, and we rate crabapples on their disease resistance against several different diseases. The ones that we have to focus on around here, number one is apple scab. We have a ton of apple scab in this area. It causes the trees to prematurely defoliate. They get spotting on their leaves, and then they just fall off and sort of make a mess, and the tree just looks unhealthy overall. We don't spray these trees at all. So this tree is perfectly clean, no spotting on there, looks fantastic, no leaves falling off. It's leafed out all the way out to the tips. It has excellent rating. So we do excellent, good, moderate, and poor is the rating scale for crabapples. And this one has an excellent rating for apple scab. We have a beautiful one in the landscape that you can see out by Route 64. It's been in the ground for 15 plus years. It looks lovely and it's doing quite well. And we never spray it or do anything to it. If you've ever watched any of my videos before, you know that my sort of approach to growing trees is to grow trees that are going to perform well in the landscape without a lot of human intervention, in the sense of you know, regular sprayings and all sorts of other stuff that's necessary to keep a tree looking good, you know, that may be fine for a botanic garden that has a staff of chemical applicators and all sorts of other stuff. But, you know, the average homeowner, including myself, has no desire to be out there spraying a tree 2, 3, 4 times a year and that type of thing. So that's Royal Raindrops Crabapple. It gets about 15, maybe 20 feet tall and about the same wide. Tends to be just slightly upright, so generally not quite as rounded as some of the other crabapples are, but a beautiful tree and a worthy addition to your landscape and a great way to add some summer color as well as spring color and fall color. So kind of hits all the marks. And then right next to it, this is a hydrangea tree. And this particular one is called Limelight. We have several different varieties of hydrangea tree. What I wanted to just show you is it's got this nice single trunk. So normally we think about a hydrangea as a big multi-stemmed shrub, and this one is grown or grafted onto a single stem. We can graft just about any of the paniculata hydrangeas or panicled hydrangeas onto a single stem. So in this case, the graft union is kind of right in there. The reason I point that out is that you can grow dwarf hydrangeas on a single trunk. You can grow pink hydrangeas like vanilla strawberry or pinky winky. This one just happens to be Limelight, and so I brought it up here. The other reason I wanted to talk about this, I mean, aside from the obvious, absolutely gorgeous flowers on there, is just a little bit about care, because it's a very popular tree. It only gets about 6 to 8 feet high and wide. So really nice near a patio or deck or that sort of small contained space between the sidewalk and the house. But let's talk about care. Really, really easy to care for trees. They only need to be pruned one time a year. What I like to do is take these stems down by about 20 to 30% in the very, very late fall or very early spring / late winter. And when you're pruning them, if we're going to take these stems down, kind of back up, we want to take that stem down about 20 or 30%. And we want to trim just right above one of these leaf joints here. So you can kind of see that little darkish spot right at the base of the green stem. That's next year's bud. That's going to produce new growth. So when we trim, we just want to trim right above one of these buds, and we don't want to leave all these stubs. So if I trim right there, right below these buds, I'm going to end up with this like dead twig, dead stick out at the end. So I trim right above those buds, and it's going to produce, you know, nice new growth. I do like to cut it back. Otherwise, they tend to get a little top heavy. You know, being that we're sort of making this a tree where it wants to be a shrub, we have to be a little cautious about how top heavy the tree gets. So a good, healthy trim back every season is really going to benefit this tree a lot. Unlike other hydrangeas, they are not sensitive to soil pH and all that kind of stuff. So a very easy to grow tree. That's Limelight hydrangea. Right over here, we have the hardiest, in my opinion, of the Japanese maples. This is a palmate maple, meaning its leaf is shaped like a palm. And if we sort of zoom in there, you can sort of see what I'm talking about, the shape of that leaf. So this is Acer, which is maple, Acer palmatum. And this one happens to be Bloodgood. So Bloodgood is a zone 5 hardy tree. Really holds up pretty well. Japanese maples have a tendency to be very touchy, but Bloodgood holds up pretty darn well. We have a nice one in front of the building. It's been there a long time, survived several polar vortex winters, and has done just, you know, really quite well for us over the years. The leaves come out burgundy in the spring. They stay burgundy all summer long. They really don't have much of a flower. It's a very inconspicuous flower. And then the foliage is actually going to turn bright red in the fall, and then it's just going to drop for the winter. Very little care necessary. If this was my tree, I'd probably thin it out and expose some of those trunks down at the bottom. I like the character that Japanese maples have when you can see their trunks and stems. So that's sort of my preference, but that's not a necessity. You can just put it in and let it go. They have very few disease or insect problems to speak of and hold up pretty well, but are going to give you a ton of color. Great summer color for sure, and then really wonderful fall color. The bright red fall color is really a showstopper, and it's a pretty late fall color, which is kind of nice too. I would say probably late October, early November for the fall color on Bloodgood maple. And then moving over to right here, I have this beautiful Dawn Redwood. This particular one is called Amber Glow. We have another one that looks almost identical to this called Gold Rush. And if you can remember back to maybe some of the videos that I've shown of my own landscape, we have a beautiful Gold Rush Dawn Redwood at home that's probably 25 feet high. And I'm just, you know, you can kind of see the plant here from a distance, but I'm going to walk up here and get a little closer so that you can see the needles on here. So this is a very unique tree. It is what is known as a deciduous conifer. So deciduous meaning its leaves fall off in the fall, just like a maple or an oak, but conifer meaning that it's a cone-bearing plant like a pine or spruce. So it obviously has a needle that looks more like a pine or spruce than a leaf like a maple or an oak. Very unique tree. The bark has this sort of almost pinkish hue to it. It looks a little more brown on the camera, but in person, it has almost a kind of a pinkish appearance. So very soft and lacy texture and almost a bicolor. The exterior needles and foliage are a really bright chartreusey yellow. And then the interior foliage, where it doesn't get quite as much sun, is kind of more green. So it almost gives it kind of a dusted or two-tone appearance. So beautiful, beautiful tree. I would say size-wise, Amber Glow is going to be a little bit smaller, 15, maybe 20 tall by 8 to 10 or 12 wide. Gold Rush is probably going to be just a little bit bigger than that, 30-ish tall and 12 to 15 wide. It's a very, very upright tree. It's very easy to trim. It can tolerate a moist soil or average soil. So Dawn Redwoods are very moisture tolerant. I have mine in a raised bed, actually, kind of a sloping area that has a little retaining wall on the back side of it. And it's a very dry location and it's done great. But I've used Dawn Redwood in very kind of wet, moist locations in the past, and they've done equally as well. The color is very hard to beat, and these trees are basically bulletproof. No disease, no insect, no spraying, nothing necessary to keep a tree like this Amber Glow Dawn Redwood looking beautiful. So if you're looking for something to add some color and texture to your landscape, I would say that would be a really good one for you to add. Moving on, I've got a couple other trees over here. This is a Japanese maple that is different than the one I showed you before, the Bloodgood. This one is called Crimson Queen. And I just wanted to sort of show you the difference between the palmate leafed Japanese maples and this, which are called thread-leafed Japanese maple. This very narrow, lacy foliage. Two-tone in appearance, kind of green with burgundy in there. This is going to have absolutely spectacular fall color as well. This is going to be bright orangey red in the fall. It has an almost weeping or horizontal habit to it. So Bloodgood is an upright tree getting about 15 feet high. This particular tree is basically as tall as it's going to get. It was staked. You can sort of see, if we look inside there, you can see this stake here. And generally, once where the stake ends, you can see this tree is starting now to weep back over. Once the stake ends, that's basically as tall as these trees are going to get. So you can have one that was staked to 1 foot or 2 foot and is very low and almost prostrate in its growth habit. You could have one that's staked up to 8 feet and has a very upright profile and then weeps over, and everywhere in between. So beautiful trees, they're easy to manipulate. They're commonly used in bonsai and Japanese gardens and things like that. They are not nearly as hardy as some of the other ones, so I definitely recommend a protected location. Ideally, the east side of the home is a really nice location, or up against the house, or just in a very well-established area. Our service area is kind of the Chicagoland suburbs, the western suburbs, and I normally recommend east of us. If you go west of us out into the DeKalb area where it gets a little more open, windy, farmland, that kind of stuff, these are not going to hold up all that great. If you go east, basically towards the lake and towards the nearer suburbs, they tend to do much, much better there, or just, like I said, in town in a very established location. And again, preferably a protected location up near the house. The rest of these don't need any protection whatsoever, but it's a neat tree and I get a lot of questions about it, so I wanted to show that to you. The one behind it there is a Rising Sun Redbud, And this one over here is another colored redbud called Flamethrower. I just want to sort of show you the difference between the two. They both add a ton of color. Rising Sun, the leaves sort of come out a pinky red color and very quickly go to a really nice chartreuse yellowy green. It gets about 15 to 20 feet high. It gets covered in lavender flowers in the springtime. It is an Illinois native. Of course, Rising Sun, you're not going to see that bright chartreuse yellow color in the landscape. It is a selection, but really neat plant with a lot of color. There's a really nice one that I drive past all the time in downtown St. Charles that it just always looks nice. I love the color. It's a very soft color with the pink and the yellow and kind of some of the peachy colors up there. And it does that all throughout the summer. So the new growth is always got this really neat coloring to it. And then as the leaves mature, they mature to a chartreusey, yellowy green color. So it sort of gives you a more than two-tone, 2, 3, 4-tone tree. And then Flamethrower is brand new. It's only been on the market a couple of years. We actually have sold out like 4 times. We're sold out currently. This one's actually sold. You can see the orange ribbon on it. But we have some more coming on, I believe, Wednesday. But Flamethrower just takes Rising Sun and just sort of magnifies all the crazy color changes. So what this one does is the leaves come out purple, very quickly changing to sort of an orangey red, maroony red color. And then as the leaf matures, it gets more orange and then starts to go to yellow and then bright yellow and then eventually to green more inside the plant in here, which is kind of hard to see on the camera. But when I back up, and since the leaves are always at varying stages of maturity, you get what I call sort of the stoplight effect. You get the red, the yellow, and the green all on the same tree, all at the same time, and all throughout the season. So the ones that we had in early in the spring were absolutely beautiful showstoppers. We sold out very quickly. We actually got a second and then a third batch, and just really, really fascinated by this tree. I have never seen a fully mature one because it's a relatively new plant, but I really like it. Very cool tree. This is a young one, of course. Size-wise, again, 15, maybe 18 feet high and wide, and still has the beautiful purple lavender flowers in the springtime of the native redbud. So it's going to give you color basically all season long, from April all the way until the leaves drop in late October or November. Moving on, this is another tree that I'm really fascinated by. This is another native tree. This is a Pagoda Dogwood. Pagoda Dogwood grow naturally, natively in our area as sort of an understory tree. You'll find them in the sort of the edges of the woods. You'll find them along the rivers and creeks. The birds absolutely love these. They get covered with white flowers in the spring and then a very small blackish fruit that the birds absolutely love. And this particular one is called Golden Shadows. It's been on the market for a while and got picked up by PW in terms of branding it and whatnot. So I'm just going to zoom in here and show you the coloration on the foliage, which is, again, very, very striking. It's a bright chartreusey yellow combined with a dark green. And a lot of times in the summer when it's been getting some decent sunlight, some of that yellow will even get some hints of pink to it. And of course you can see that on that foliage right through there and on some of those leaves underneath. But the fresh foliage is really bright yellowy green. The other thing that's really unique about the Golden Shadows, or just Pagoda Dogwood, I guess, in general, is it has this very horizontal kind of layered branching structure. That is absolutely natural. That's just the way they grow, which is where the name Pagoda Dogwood comes from. It's got a very sort of Japanese look to it, but they're actually an Illinois native. So Pagoda is just the name because it has that appearance. Does not need pruning or any special attention to create that. Golden Shadows is going to be a tree that's only going to get about 12-ish feet high. So it's a smaller version of Pagoda Dogwood. Regular Pagoda Dogwood can get about 15 or 18 feet high. I've even seen them higher than that. But they will do very well in a, not necessarily protected location, but slightly shaded location. If you plant a Golden Shadows in full hot sun, you're probably going to get a little bit of leaf burn on it. Pagoda dogwood likes to be an understory, so it loves to be in a mature yard. It loves to be in and amongst older trees. It loves a location maybe where it's protected by the house, so like the east side of the house where it gets morning sun and then afternoon shade. It doesn't need the protection from, the wind and things like that. It's more just the sunlight that it needs the protection from. So that hot afternoon sun would be protected by, or would be shaded by the house if you had it planted on the east side of the house. But again, it can tolerate the weather. It holds up very well. They're actually zone 3 hardy, so it holds up really, really well here. Beautiful, beautiful small tree and a worthy addition to your landscape. And then last on my list today is one of my absolute favorite trees. This is a tricolor beech. They are very awkward when they are young. This is actually a very nice, healthy tree. It is young, of course. I didn't bring up, well, actually, I don't think we have any large ones left, but I didn't bring up any large mature or more mature specimens because it's just hard for me to bring them up here. Of course, it's easier to move and carry, some of the smaller potted trees than it is our large balled and burlapped trees. But I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and show you a little bit about this. So tricolor beech is a European beech, and most European beech have green foliage, and the foliage is kind of a glossy, thick texture to it. Holds up really well to our weather here. Virtually nothing gets at the foliage, no insect, nothing, although we did see some woolly aphids on beech this year, but that's kind of a more mild problem. Doesn't really affect the foliage and can be treated pretty easily. But you can just see, even at this time of year, later in the summer, the foliage has not been munched on by insects or anything like that, so it really looks nice. And it has this two-tone greenish color in the middle and pinkish color around the margins. This is the time of year when they probably, in my opinion, look their worst. And I still think it's a beautiful tree right now. And I'm going to go around the side of the building here and show you our mature tricolor beech. There it is. It's a solid 20 feet tall for sure. Of course, it's in a raised planter box there, and then it sticks up higher than the building. So I'm going to say 20 to 25 tall right now. Beautiful kind of gray bark that as it matures sort of takes on kind of the texture of like elephant skin. So it's just very unique. The European beech has a very unique bark that I think is really gorgeous. The foliage is much brighter in the springtime than it is right now. As I mentioned, this is probably the time of year that they look worst. You can see a little bit of brown along the edge there. That is totally normal for them. It's just a little bit of sunburn. That light pinky, creamy white margin is like a fair-skinned person. Fair skin tends to burn much easier than darker skin, and that's sort of what happens on the tricolor beech at this time of year. Now, this one is on the west side of our building, so it gets a lot of afternoon sun. But this tree is an absolute showstopper in the spring and early summer. It comes out bright purple and pink. It is a very unique tree. It's a very upright tree, so you kind of see the profile of the tree. It keeps a relatively upright profile in its youth and then starts to fan out in its maturity. Again, if you've watched any of my videos where I've been showing my landscape at home, we have two very large specimens at home that we were just fortunate to inherit from the previous homeowner that are about 30 years old. And they're relatively rounded trees, about 30, 35 tall, and 20, 25 wide. One of my absolute favorites, I had one at my last house that people used to stop and ask me about. It was in the front yard, and everybody wanted to know what type of tree it was. It's one of those that we get a lot of questions about. We have some planted in a field right along Route 64 that we've been growing, and it's another one that in the springtime, people legitimately will just pull into our parking lot and walk up to us and ask us what those trees are that are growing out there because they're so striking. So that's our tricolor beech. Again, mature size is probably 30 by 20, I would say, is a good average size for them. Thank you again for being with me on a Saturday morning for Coffee Chat with Matt. I hope that you've maybe found a little bit of inspiration for a new small tree for your yard, or maybe got some questions answered. If you have any questions about the trees that I have mentioned on this video, please feel free to comment in the comment section. You can email or text us. We'd be happy to help you in that way.